Breaking news: Maduro's capture is a blow to China, but no Chinese social media is being hailed as a blueprint for Taiwan. Venezuela and China has been in partnership since 2023. China has been of support to Venezuela, providing economic aids and diplomatic support to Venezuela. Maduro was with the Chinese diplomat Queen Zhangqi, posing for pictures and praising the Chinese government. He never knew that the Americans are planning to capture him, and he has been captured and taken to New York by the US Army. China has been the largest buyer of the Venezuela oil. Now, Venezuela is owing China $62.5 billion. So guys, let's sit back and listen in detail how Maduro capture is a blow to China. As US Special Force were in the final stage of planning a daring nightmare operation into the heart of the Venezuela capital, President Nicolas Maduro was posing for photographs with Chinese top envoy to Latin America and lavishing praise on Beijing's leadership. I thank President Xi Jinping for his continued brotherhood like an elder brother, Maduro told Chinese diplomat Queen Zhangqi, as laughter echoed through the exchange at the Maduros Palace in Caracas. Hours later, Maduro was snatched from his bedroom by Allied Delta Force commandos from the US Army, and China was staring at the stark reality it had just lost one of its staunchest partners in Latin America. China and Venezuela have maintained close relations for decades, forged by a shared political ideology and mutual distrust of a world led by the United States. Through an all-weather strategic partnership established in 2023, Beijing pulled Caracas further into its orbit with deepened economic aid and diplomatic support. The bulk of Venezuela oil exports flow to China, and Chinese companies finances extensive infrastructure projects and investment across the country, with Beijing lending billions to Caracas in recent decades. Trump's move has appeared to upend that relationship, at least for now, raising questions over Chinese preferential access to Venezuela oil and the future of its political and economic influence in the wider region. Beijing has been quick to denounce Maduro's capture, condemning Washington for behaving like the world's police. Chinese social media has also erupted with excitement and discussion about the US action. By late Monday, topics linked to Trump's capture of Maduro had received more than 650 million impressions on Weibo, Chinese X-like social media platform, with many users suggesting it could offer a template for Beijing's own potential military takeover of Taiwan. If the US can snatch a leader in their backyard, many ask, why can't China do the same? China's ruling Communist Party claimed the self-governing democracy as its territory, despite never having controlled it, and has vowed to absorb the island by force if necessary. In recent years, Beijing has ramped up its military intimidation of Taiwan, including by stimulating blockades. But while the prospect of capturing Taiwan leader may have stoked nationalist fever online, officially Beijing has adopted a markedly different tone, portraying the U.S. raid as a hegemonic act, while calling for the immediate release of Maduros and his wife. On Monday, Xi took a further veiled sweep at Washington when he condemned unilateral bullying that seriously undermines the international order during a meeting with the visiting Irish Prime Minister. All countries should respect other people, independent choices of development paths, and abide by international law and the purpose and principle of the United Nations Charter, with major powers in particular setting the example, he said. State-run media has wasted little time seizing on the incidents to highlight what it described as U.S. hypocrisy. The U.S. invasion has made it increasingly clear to everyone that what the United States call a rules-based international order is in reality nothing more than a plunder-based order driven by U.S. interests. A commentary by state-run Xinhua news agency wrote, a social media account linked to the People's Liberation Army focused more on Chinese strength and security, warning that weak military capability could invade crisis. Without adding core capabilities, it is impossible to deter predatory great powers, let alone protect the people's safety when a crisis strikes suddenly, it wrote. Yet, Beijing's rhetoric on sovereignty has been notably absent in other conflicts. When Russia, another strategic partner, invaded Ukraine in 2022, China stopped short of condemning Moscow or opposing the war, instead parroting Russia's narratives of blaming on the United States and its NATO allies for provoking the conflict. China has emerged as the largest buyer of Venezuela crude in recent years after Trump imposed sanctions against the South American nation in 2019. In the last few months of 2025, as much as 80% of its exports likely went to China, according to a market update published by data analyst firm Kaplan last month. Oil investor and analyst, however, believes U.S. action against Venezuela are unlikely to have a major impact on China's oil supply, given Venezuela's relatively modest output and the role of non-state buyer. Under the governments of Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, Venezuela crude output has fallen by 2/3 from its peak, dropping to around 1 million barrels per day, a level starkly at odds with its status as the holder of the world's largest proven oil reserve. Most of Chinese importers of Venezuela crude are also small, independent refiners known as teapots, which are drawn to the oil largely because of its steep this discount. Trump has suggested that China could continue buying some Venezuela crude, but at reduced volumes. The arrangement under Trump would likely end the deep discounts that have made the oil attractive to teapots. Beyond energy, Beijing has also hailed Venezuela as an important trading partner and investment destination for China in Latin America. In the decades since 2007, China lent Venezuela $62.5 billion, nearly half of the Chinese lending to South America for the period, making the country the single largest recipient of Chinese finance worldwide, according to research by Washington-based Stimson Center. As talk now inevitably turns to whether the U.S. attack on Venezuela could embody China in Taiwan, many are struggling off such threats. Wang Tingyu, a lawmaker from Taiwan ruling party who sits on the Legislative Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, rejected the idea China might follow the U.S. precedents and attack the island. China is not the U.S. and Taiwan is not Venezuela. Comparison that China can carry out the same thing in Taiwan is wrong and inappropriate, Wang said, adding that China has never been short of hostility towards Taiwan militarily. What it lacks is feasible means. Although China Z has long described reunification with Taiwan as inevitable, expert says Beijing will continue to treat cautiously. William Yang, senior analyst at Beijing-based think tank International Crisis Group, said the U.S. move against Venezuela is unlikely to have any direct and fundamental impact on Chinese calculation over a potential invasion of Taiwan. Instead, Yang said the factors determining Beijing's timeline to take over Taiwan boils down to Chinese domestic economic situation, the People's Liberation Army capability, Taiwan domestic political situation, as well as Washington policy towards Taiwan and China. But Washington's actions create a new normal, he warns. The takeaway for Taiwan is that restoring to military options to pursue certain foreign policy goals is likely going to become a new norm and new reality around the world, Yang told CNN. Taiwan should really take this by heart and start to think about how to improve Taiwan's defense capability and improve Taiwan's ability to maintain deterrence against China. And further afield in Latin America, questions remain over the future of China's long-term strategy in what Washington has traditionally viewed as its backyard. Dan Wang, China director at political risk consultancy Russia Group, said although the ousting of Maduros represented a major setback for Beijing's broader strategic influence in the region, it could continue to leverage its investment in South America, especially in power supply and telecommunication, where any effort to remove Chinese companies from critical infrastructural projects could lead to social instability. Yang echoed the sentiment, saying that Beijing is more likely to prioritize minimizing the fallout on its